This is Rick Rule for Rule Investment Media and the Rule Classroom, sponsors of the 2025 Rule Natural Resources Investment Symposium, held July 7 through 11 in Boca Raton, Florida, or via live stream wherever you are. However you attend, live or live stream, there's a few things you need to know about the conference. The first is that we'll give you more programming between 50 and 55 hours than you can absorb in 4 days. To that end, the entire proceedings are recorded. You will be able to and you will need to refresh your memory from the recordings. Something else, though, we interview every single public company exhibitor before the conference, giving you the ability to utilize your time before the conference and at the conference more efficiently so that you get out of the conference, so that you get more out of the conference. One more thing. Every single public company exhibitor at this conference is owned in the conference sponsor's own accounts. Unvetted exhibitors don't get to show up. We turn down more companies that want to exhibit than we accept for exhibition. Repeat, every public company at the conference is owned in our accounts. While that sadly is no guarantee that the share prices go up, it is a guarantee that we vetted every single exhibitor. I take particular pleasure in this next interview. I'm interviewing Morgan Hart from Emerald Resources, where I am and have been for a very long time a shareholder. Besides that, I was a shareholder of their prior effort, Regis Resources, which had a very happy result for me and is the reason why I, in fact, was eager to invest in Emerald. Morgan, thank you for your efforts on behalf of mining shares investors, but particularly myself, going back a long time. Tell us something about who you are and what you've done.
Well, thanks, Rick, and thanks for your support over the period of time and your investors. I'm a geologist by profession. And obviously, Emerald is the last in a succession of successful companies that I've been involved in. Some at the management level, some at the grassroots level. But since about 1990, I've been involved in 4 companies with the same mantra: Samantha Gold, Equigold, Regis, and Emerald. And all of those were very low market cap companies, starting at about the $20 million market cap level, that built their success and their shareholder wealth on building gold mines with the minimum capital cost, operating those gold mines, and then building more from the actual cash flow from the projects. And that's certainly was the case at Samantha Gold, Equigold. Regis, my last company, was a COO at, and my development team came from. And now Emerald, obviously, was a sub $20 million market cap company that's now got a 3 billion Australian, 2 billion US dollar market cap, off the basis of building his first gold mine in Cambodia, which wasn't particularly popular at the time, a place for investment, but certainly with your group's help, it was funded initially, and now we're in a situation where we can build that project, build the company out of building more projects out of the cash flows. Geologist by trade, gone through the whole process of being mine management, country managers in Africa, etc., and now CEO of Emerald with my team behind me.
Well, certainly I enjoyed the process at Regis. The move into Cambodia, while Cambodia wasn't a particularly popular country, seemed attractive to me. The deposit seemed relative to the cost to put it into production, or the cost that we thought it was going to take to put it into production, attractive with regard to tons and grades. Tell me something about how that went. Was construction, as an example, on time, on budget? Was the exploration potential that we thought was there? Give us an overview of Cambodia.
Yeah, it's a really good question, Rick. And yeah, it wasn't that popular at the time. And interestingly, in terms of the demographics of investors that came in the early point, it was US and European type investors that invested. And I suspect that's because you've got a higher appetite for risk in some of the things you invested in South America and the Americas, in Africa. But Cambodia, we looked at that, and we worked all over the world. We built a project in the Ivory Coast in the last decade, which was a successful project, still running now. Obviously, we don't own it. That was our Equigold, with our Equigold hat on. But Cambodia, to me, was an unexplored area. It was a spot that no Western company had come to have a look at. We loved this particular project. It was modest, I suppose, in terms of ounces compared to some things now at about a million ounces. But we could see that we could turn that into a very profitable project at low cost because it was high grade, low strip. What we had to get our head around was the government and the country itself, which surprises in how amenable they are to investment. And I suppose we've got that across to investors like yourself along the way. It's US domiciled contracts, freedom of banking, 30% tax rate, offshore arbitration, and you can write a minimal investment agreement with the government with 3% royalty. It doesn't come much cleaner than that, especially with 100% ownership, which, to be fair, in the rest of Southeast Asia, sometimes the problem is about your ownership yourself. And we went in, obviously, with this Okvau project. We built that. We built it on time, on budget during COVID, which at the very low end of the capital cost scale, which is our forte. We've got an in-house build team that's built 5 projects now in the last 15 years, all on time, on budget, at the very, very low end of the capital cost scale. And that project itself has funded now an enormous exploration push in Cambodia. We've got about 1,500 square kilometres of tenure there. We found another project about 100 kilometres away called the Mamot project, which we intend to bring into production next year. It's already about 1 million ounces at just under 2 grams of resource. We're expecting that to increase in the next few months as we come out with the next upgrade of that resource and reserve statement as we go into development next year.
And I'm not asking you to be forward-looking, but how is the project performing financially now?
Yeah, well, in the last year, it produced over 200 million of cash flow. It was 98 million in this last quarter of the last year. It runs at about the 110, 120,000 ounce per annum mark, and our cash costs have been between 8 and 900 US, creeping up slightly now into more to the 900s. But going forward, it's definitely the underpin of all the builds that we want to do and the growth in the company itself. So our plan now is to do all of our exploration, do a build in Cambodia, and do a build in Australia, the company we took over last year, all out of cash flow. And I think, just not to get ahead of ourselves, but that's really the sell point for our company now is we are at a point where we look at the operation that we currently got. It's a very profitable operation, but the investment case for our company is that we're about to, in the next 18 months, go from 110, 120,000 ounces to well over 300,000 ounces without having to tap the shareholders on the shoulder again. And we actually don't even need any more debt. I mean, we probably put some debt in place at the corporate level, but we don't need it.
Tell me something about the Australian asset.
Yeah, well, that was it was a private company called Bullseye Mining, and it was a unique situation in that it was in a private group and had been held up in this private group for quite some period of time. And it had, it was a bit of a chew, to be honest, when we first bid at it, because it had been in the Supreme Court for 72 days with a disgruntled shareholders. There was 2 sets of disgruntled shareholders we've now solved. We own 100% of the project. We've had that since the early part of last year. We came out with 1 million ounces of resources there just before Christmas. We're about to come up with another increase in that resource in the next 2 months again because we haven't stopped drilling it. And again, we've actually started building that project. We're putting the 240-man camp in now. That'll be finished by early October, and we'll be well into construction on that project next year.
Meaning you have a definitive feasibility study on that project now.
No, we get ahead of ourselves a bit sometimes, Rick. No, we know that we already run our numbers. We know what it needs to actually bring into production. We know the mill it needs, so we're already ahead of ourselves on that. But we certainly know where the reserve's going to come out on it. And because we're not taking this to a bank, we're doing feasibility studies on this thing as we go forward. But we don't need to put a DFS out or a BFS out at any stage. We will come out with a full go-ahead from the board at some point. But, spending money on it now is certainly the cheap way to keep things moving and get ourselves into production by, the end of the calendar next year.
When will the market have a sense of net present value, of capital cost, of anticipated return on invested capital, and AISC? In other words, when will there be a document that the folks can sink their teeth into?
Yeah, in the second calendar half of this year.
Great. Second calendar.
Yeah, so between the last quarter of this calendar, so the December quarter.
Okay, got it. Very poor timing. Not in time for the Natural Resources Investment Symposium, which is a grievous oversight that will excuse you. So what we're doing really is the first one on time, on budget, performing as expected, except for you got a nice surprise in the gold price.
Yep.
Which effectively means you're self-funding. And
Yes.
If I heard what you just said, over the next 3 years, you anticipate as much as a tripling of production. Did I hear that correctly, between the new Cambodian asset and the Australian asset?
That's the low end of our predictions. Yeah, we think higher.
Which basically means what you intend to do is repeat the success that I enjoyed at Regis.
Correct. Exactly right. And at Samantha and at Equigold previous, they were all the same rule book.
Well, sadly, I wasn't there for that one, but that's okay. Morgan, if our attendees want to learn more, and they should, who do they talk to, And how do they reach that person?
Well, they can reach me, absolutely. And because of the importance of your conference, Rick, we've actually put an email address in place specifically for it, which is rulesymposium@emeraldresources.com.au. If they send their emails to that, I'll be looking at them and returning replies.
So you heard it, folks. You talked to the boss. The best possible answer to that question. Serially successful guy, a guy who's made me some money, a guy who I look forward to hosting to at the Natural Resources Investment Symposium. Morgan, one more time, thank you for your efforts on everyone's behalf, and thank you for your sponsorship and support. We look forward to hosting you in Boca Raton.
Thanks, Rick, and thanks for your support and your investors.
It's been a pleasure.